Welcome back to CarScoops. I'm Steven Rivers, and this week we're driving this thing, the 2025 Volkswagen ID Buzz. Now, before we came out here, we asked you, what do you want to know about this new flagship minivan? Today, we're going to give you the answers. So our first question is this thing on sale yet? And the answer is kind of yes, kind of no. It's a good question because Volkswagen's been teasing this for basically 20 years. Now, I say yes because, yeah, you can go to your dealership right now and order one. And in fact, those who have already ordered one have information that their vehicles are either built or being built, and the next step is shipping and delivery. So yeah, they are technically on sale, but I say no because don't expect to roll up to your local Volkswagen dealer and find one today. They're not going to be there. Like I said, most people have put in orders, and so they're waiting. And in addition, keep in mind that each dealer is only going to get one or two of these things. So it's going to be hard to find them, probably hard to find them without a markup. One reader asked, how's the software? This has been a recurring question about Volkswagens in the last few years, and honestly, I'm happy to report that it is better. It's not perfect, but it is very reactive, it's very fast, and it basically reacts as quickly as you might want it to. It feels kind of like a cell phone. The graphics are crisp and clear. There's really not a lot of complaints when it comes to those things. Unfortunately, some of it still feels kind of half-baked. Now, I should mention this might be a pre-production model, so maybe Volkswagen will polish some things between now and when owners get their production vehicles. But for instance, if there's a way to see tire pressure, I can't find it. Volkswagen does have a page that looks like it's dedicated to showing you that, but it doesn't actually show up. In addition, all those complaints about the haptic feedback sliders, well, Volkswagen seemingly hasn't heard them because they're still here. In terms of turning up the volume, turning down the volume, changing climate controls, things like that, they're still haptic feedback buttons. So it's an improvement, but it's far from perfect. One reader asked, is the interior already dated? Frankly, I don't think so. In terms of packaging, this might be one of the most clever, if not the most clever, interior packaging in the game right now. Now, does that mean that it looks super futuristic and is going to make you feel like you're getting a car from 2040? No, not necessarily. Everything in here feels relatively conventional, but the packaging is just so good that I don't really think you could call this dated at this point. The first, second, and third rows all offer excellent headroom and legroom. You can easily transport 6 or 7 people in here in comfort for a long way. That said, it's not perfect. A lot of this interior is still really plasticky, despite the entry price. Even on the top trim models, you end up with a lot of hard plastics in places that I didn't expect them. In addition to that, there are some weird omissions. For example, there's no real dedicated cup holder in the second row. That seems really strange for a minivan of all things. One reader asked, what's the real world range? And now we've spent quite a bit of time on the highway, we've spent time in the city, in canyon roads. We've been getting between 2.7 to 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. This thing has a 91 kilowatt hour battery pack, so that adjusts out to about 230 to 260 miles of range, real world range, in a mix of driving. We haven't really beat on this thing, but we have driven it maybe a little more spiritedly than most people would. Is that good? 230 to 260 miles. I think on paper, against most of the cars that you might consider against this, no, it's really not great. At the same time, I'm happy to report that it's at least what Volkswagen has promised, 234 or 231 miles of range, and it's not dropping below that in the real world. Someone asked what the fast charge rates are for each trim. Volkswagen says this thing will charge at 200 kilowatt hours on a fast charger. That's fine, that's not bad. It's not really up to snuff with many of the leaders in the segment, though, and that might be a problem for some. Considering the limited range that this vehicle has, you really want to be able to charge it quickly, especially if you're going to do something like a road trip. So that's something to consider if you're thinking about buying one of these. Another reader asked, how easy is it to remove the seats? And they don't mean just the rear ones. They asked about the rear, the third row and the second row. The third row is relatively easy to remove. Volkswagen specifically designed them to be able to be pulled out so that you can basically run around with 2 rows of seating. The second row is a little more challenging to remove, though. Technically it's possible, but don't expect it to be this super simple thing that you just do in your garage right before you go somewhere. It'll take a little more time and some tools to accomplish. Another reader asked about noise, handling, vibration. How does it feel to drive? Well, I'll tell you this, it actually feels really solid to me. Having driven both the rear-wheel drive and the all-wheel drive versions, both feel very solid, very well put together, kind of impressive if I'm totally honest. At the same time, it's worth noting that both are really stiff, even in the comfort setting that Volkswagen has for each of these vans. Not sure if it's all to do with the suspension. The tires probably play a role. It might be good to have some disconnectable sway bars or something of that nature, but driving around what are relatively well-maintained roads, it's still pretty choppy. I can still feel a lot of the vibration making its way into the vehicle itself. It's still quiet and it's still comfortable, but it wouldn't surprise me if this is the kind of vehicle where you need to take things easy to make sure that your passengers don't get sick. Someone asked, how does this compare to other vehicles like it? Does it compare well in terms of price? What about range? Things like that. Well, it's kind of tough to say, right? There's really no other electric minivans on sale right now. Kia is coming out with the PV5 shortly, so we'll have to wait to see what that offers in terms of range and price to be able to compare it. Right now, Volkswagen is really just comparing this against things like the Pacifica, the Kia EV9, even the Chevy Suburban is something that they talked about. In terms of packaging, I think this is by far the best. It's so easy to fit 6 or 7 people in this, and all of them can be comfortable. So there, I think it's a complete win. When we really look at range and price, though, it might be another story. And that leads us to our last question, probably the most important one. Due to its, quote, high price, remember this thing starts at $60,000 for the rear-wheel drive base model, does it deliver on that price tag? The all-wheel drive version that we drove was over $70,000, and that's before we talk about what will inevitably be a dealer markup when these things first make it to lots. I don't think it does, frankly. $70,000, even $60,000 is a lot of money to spend on any vehicle, and I think if we take away the nostalgia of what this vehicle is, it's going to be tough to sell it on paper, right? 234 miles of range is not much. You can get that kind of range out of most EVs for $10,000 less or more, and most EVs will fit 4 or 5 people. So unless you absolutely have to have the third row, it's a tough sell. Now, again, in terms of nostalgia, in that realm, it absolutely pays off. People who remember having one of these when they were a kid, their parents might have had one, their grandparents might have had one, they're going to love it. If they have the money for this and they don't want to drive something like a Rivian R1S, yeah, they're going to love it. This will be totally fun. It gets tons of smiles per mile, as Volkswagen likes to say. Lots of people have stopped and wanted to see it. Lots of people have given us thumbs up as we're driving around. That's all well and good. On paper, when it comes to the actual price and the range that you get, I really don't think it's there, though. Remember that the original bus was only about $2,200, something like that. And adjusted for inflation, that's $22,000 today. Now, obviously, Volkswagen can't sell this for that, It's an EV. They've had to make a lot of changes since they first introduced this concept 20-some years ago. But $60,000 for a base price? That seems like a lot more than the original $22,000 that, adjusted for inflation, it could have been. What made the original bus so special was that it was an economical vehicle. It hauled all your friends, it was inexpensive, and that's kind of what made it a counterculture icon. This is only going to be owned by people that have the money to pay $60, $70, or even more $1,000 for it. That seems like the opposite of counterculture to me. So that's everything that you wanted to know about the Volkswagen ID Buzz. If you have any more questions, leave them for us in the comments below. We'll answer them there. Till next time, this is CarScoops.